Welcome to Vermont Film Essentials. I'm Lincoln L. Hayes.
I'm David Metzger.
Joining us are three of our favorite guests to talk about my favorite movie in our season finale, Star Wars. We're talking Star Wars this week. We've got Devon Ewalt, Rachel Riendeau, and
Mark Evan Petersburg.
Tim Bridge, everybody. Vermont's funniest comedian, can't you tell?
Not from that last one. We're hanging out.
So David was nice enough to throw Star Wars in for the season finale for us. Let's just jump right in. And the first time we saw it, if we can remember the first time.
No idea. No idea. Baby child. Small boy.
We should also note that Tim was the perfect demographic for the prequels. Mm-hmm. When Phantom Menace came out, that was right in his wheelhouse.
I was nine and I liked it because
you were 9.
Because I was 9, and that movie was made for 9-year-olds.
Exactly. Starring an 8-year-old for 9-year-olds.
You love Muppets. You don't understand what racism is. So everything's fun.
Everything's
fun.
Great.
Everything's great.
Rachel, when was yours?
Oh, I was a kid. In another one that my parents were like, we're going to watch this. Because, I was probably like 8 or 9 when I saw it for the first time.
It really is an imprinting movie.
Yeah.
Like, I totally was my parents showing it to me, too.
Yeah.
It was not like I sought this out. This was
Right,
this
yeah.
is like,
Well, because your parents
like
are like
Star Wars.
your parents are like proud of it as a thing. They
Right,
wanna
because
share
they saw it
with
in the
you.
theater, and they're like,
Right.
this is really fun, and they wanted me and my brother to watch it, so we watched it. And I think they had bought like the VHS pack of they had just re-released it or something at the time, like in the early 90s maybe, and we watched like all of them. I don't think in one sitting, but like pretty close together, and I loved it. I became obsessed with it.
Yeah, too young to know. Devin, did you go?
No.
Oh.
But it's cool though.
You chimed in. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Similar thing. Parents showed it to me. I think my dad in particular was pretty gung-ho about it.
Having an older brother, it started with him. Like, he had the toys that I wanted to steal. Mm-hmm. He had the pajamas that I wanted to wear, and all that stuff. And then 97 was when they did the whole re-release in the theaters. And I hate that George Lucas does this to me, but watching it on Sunday night for this, I have the DVD that has the original, and then it has the re-release.
Right.
But because he's George Lucas, he doesn't do anything to the original. Like, he doesn't do any mastering of it. It's just, and if you have an older DVD player, it boxes it in and doesn't fill the screens. So I put it in wanting to watch the original and then couldn't. Got mad about it in a ridiculous way, to which Robin's like, you should probably overreact.
That's why I love
and
Robin.
then we're forced to watch the 97 re-release, which, oh God. There's like scenes where it's like, they're driving into the bar, and like there's like all the little creatures that he painted in. It's like, what is this, man? And the whole Jabba thing, like I can't even watch.
It's immersion.
It's so bad.
It immerses you in the story.
So it's funny that you guys were all like handed it to you from your parents and like, watch this piece of cinema history. I don't think my parents have even seen it. Like, I don't know if they've ever watched all 3 of them at all. So I came about it actually thanks to Weird Al Yankovic and his song Yoda. And then I found somewhere I got a demo of a Star Wars game called, what was it called? Dark Forces 2. And you're like a Jedi in training. You get 1 level to play, and that's all you got. But that like planted the seed of, I want to know more about Star Wars. So my brother had seen it in one of his classes in high school, like, the end of the term, and they put on a movie for you to watch. And he's like, I kind of remember it, but I don't know. So I'm like trying to piece it together. This is pre-internet, so I can't like find anything, and I live out in the middle of nowhere. And then '97 happens, and I get the VHS box set for Christmas that year, and I watch it religiously. And I would always skip New Hope, though. I would always go to either Empire or Jedi because there was more lightsaber battles, and that's what I wanted to watch. I wanted to watch more Jedi stuff, and then in later years and subsequently, I pretty much only want to watch New Hope now, and Empire's still my favorite, but I'll always watch New Hope, and I'll always I forget how great it is, and then you get the crawl. And you get the lowering down, and you see the Star Destroyer coming in, and then Leia's tiny ship there, and you just remember the scale and the scope of these films, and you also remember that those are models in a shop somewhere on yet another movie that on paper should never have worked, and with all the pitfalls that they had should never have worked, and then it ends up being Star Wars.
As far as the first two films, it's sort of like Godfather 1 and 2, where just because Empire is clearly the better movie, in my opinion, it's it's important, I think, not to lose sight of how good New Hope is.
Absolutely.
And I had kind of forgotten over the years, and then I bought the Blu-ray, and it just gives you such a appreciation for it's so fun. It's like taking an adventure story and putting it in space and just creating a whole mythology. I mean, it's really amazing.
And you get right in it too. You see the ships, and you're like, oh, this is going to be big space and not like 50s space where everything looks kind of plastic and clunky. And then as soon as you see Darth Vader, you're just like, oh, wow! And he's got the James Earl Jones voice, and you're immediately sucked right into it. And then we're introduced to the droids, so you're like, okay, here's our comedic relief, and they're silly and they're besties, and it's just. And then we meet Princess Leia, and she's a badass. And it's not like, okay, this isn't a Disney princess. This is something different.
Well, this was a movie that was really kind of saved in the edit. I don't know if you guys are behind-the-scenes aficionados on this movie, but it was kind of a nightmare. The opening crawl was so long. It was rewritten by, was it Francis Ford Coppola?
It was either Coppola
or De Palma. It was De Palma.
Oh, De Palma, yeah.
De Palma wrote the opening crawl because it was just a nightmare and it wasn't simple enough.
Yeah.
And Lucas was a technical genius, but he wasn't an avid storyteller.
Right.
And so he had Spielberg working on this with him, De Palma, and so they all rewatched his opening. There's footage of Luke hanging out with his friends on Tatooine, and it was going to be intercutting that during that opening scene.
Oh man.
And then there was extra, short comedic bits that just seem strange and out of place. But it really is a masterclass in editing because it just, when you learn how much footage there was and then the simplicity of how they open it, it doesn't need to shove everything at you. It doesn't feel like a lot of films today, a lot of original sci-fi today is laden with this, heavy exposition.
Oh, there's so much information.
So much information being thrown at you. And with Star Wars, it's just very simple. It's a simple story. You know very clearly because of the light color and the dark color who's good and who is bad. And it just tells its story. It doesn't make you think that you're stupid. It keeps all the pertinent information there. Yeah. Like the most exposition laden scene is the one with Obi-Wan, and even then it's purposeful because he actually the character is learning something.
Right.
But yeah, it just chugs along so nicely.
Yeah.
Where some other films with this scope are just okay, what's okay.
And it's very easily to compare A New Hope to Phantom Menace, both being the first in their trilogies, but you almost look at Phantom Menace and go, what, you did this so well 30 years ago, 40 years ago. What happened? And what happened was he had a bunch of yes men around him for the prequels, and then he was able to do what he wanted and nobody reined him in, whereas on this one, he was so limited by technology and by his budget and by time, and he had a good group of people around him to be like, George, I don't know if this is working. Let's try this. And it's night and day between the original trilogy and anything that he's been directly involved with subsequently.
And I think, like, when I was in film school, falling in love with 70s cinema, like, there's such a wealth of auteurs and artists that came out of that time. And I think George Lucas is kind of undervalued during that time. Like, we talked about this during Close Encounters, where it's like there's this conspiracy against Spielberg and Lucas because they're always looked as the two people that, like, ruined 70s cinema and took it into a commercial money-making, the show that we have right now. And, you know, he, with THX 1138 and American Graffiti, which I love, and this, it's like, he was an artist. Like, he may have not been the strongest storyteller, he may have not have been the strongest director of actors, but, like, he had a vision.
He's pretty forthcoming about getting pretty much the basis for this from Hidden Fortress. If you watch the Criterion, there's a whole interview with him where he basically is very clear about it. And if you actually describe the plot of Hidden Fortress, it's literally Star Wars.
Yeah,
and even the bumbling, like, if you look at the two sidekicks, they resemble R2D2 and C3PO.
Yeah.
Their physiognomy it's the architecture for the characters. It's like,
one of my favorite backstories, going along with what Tim was saying, is so De Palma and Spielberg and Scorsese and Coppola, they're all like this big brat pack.
Dream team, yeah.
And Howard Hughes makes what's the movie?
Hell's Angels.
Hell's Angels. So Scorsese has a bootleg cut of this, and this is a movie he made in 1932. And they just showed it on TCM, and Robin and I watched it, and we were like blown away by it. Like, you see where everything came from. And so they have a bootleg and they're showing it, and, you know, John Milius is there, and he stands up and he's like, "This is what we should be doing. Like, everyone should take from this movie, and we should be making movies like this." And you see the dogfight scenes in the movie, and it's like, that is Star Wars. So clearly that's what George Lucas was coming from. And when he showed his cut of the movie to all of them, he spliced in the dogfights from Hell's Angels because he didn't have the special effects done yet.
Right.
But yeah, like, everyone is there, and, like, Spielberg tells it, and he's like, yeah, like, everyone was just, like, standing up and, like, ragging on him, being like, "I don't get this. Like, what are you doing? Like, this is kid stuff." And De Palma's the one that's like, you know, "I don't understand what's going on. You need to have a scroll. You need to have something that tells us what the heck is going on, because I don't know." And Spielberg's like, "Yeah," and George was just sitting there fuming.
You know, I have a vision. I have a vision. It's
Who
really
likes
great.
your vision, George?
But like, did you like some of the shots? I did. I tried to do some.
Sit down,
cool
George.
stuff.
Just
Did you
sit
get that
down.
it was Kurosawa?
Did you get that? Did you get
It's Wizard of Oz meets Kurosawa. Does that come across? Yeah, 100%.
Does it need more Muppets?
Do you think the protagonist should be a bit more like strong and like interesting?
Is he a little too whiny?
Is he a little bit too much?
What?
I model him off of personal experience because, you know, I don't have a lot going on.
And I just want to go on a Tashi station and get some power converters.
But that's great. That's something that upon rewatch I kind of appreciate about the movie is there's never been a protagonist that's so just kind of awful. You know,
He's
like,
terrible.
He's terrible.
You hate Luke.
Is all hell?
Yeah.
Yeah, the last rewatch I did, I felt the same way, that I'm like, God, Luke is whiny. I
He
forget
needs
how
to be
whiny
smacked.
he is.
Like,
Yes,
you just
I want
feel
to
like
punch him
being
in
like,
the
"Yo,
face.
come here."
His first line, Robin's like, "Ugh, I hate him."
Like, you do, you hate him. You're like, oh my God, this is the person that's going to save everyone? Come on.
But we actually, when we did Wizard of Oz last week, we talked about this because Dorothy's kind of the same way in Wizard of Oz throughout the whole thing. You're like, wow, she doesn't really do anything. Like,
Yeah,
she's just
yeah.
kind of put upon until the end. And it's like, well, that's just his journey. And I think what really saves the movie is Harrison Ford as Han Solo. Like, if you don't have him, if you don't have his character to kind of to be the opposite of Luke.
And for me,
I don't know
that's
what
when the
we're
movie
watching.
takes off too.
It's like bogey.
Right.
Like, it's like a bogey
Yeah.
role. I mean, it
Yeah.
really is that guy in the movie that, you know, seems like nothing will ruffle them, and just, yeah.
And it's really funny how like looking into like the backstories and how they were on the set, like they just kind of created their characters themselves because, you know, they also talked about this during the making of American Graffiti, where it's like Ron Howard's like, you know, hey, am I doing good, because you're not really talking to me, you're not really telling me anything.
Yeah.
And Harrison Ford said the same thing, and he's like, you can write this crap, George, but you sure as hell can't speak it.
Yeah.
Was his famous line. And then Mark Hamill would always go up to George Lucas and like make suggestions, and he would always say no. And Harrison Ford is like, just do it, kid. Just do it. Don't tell him. Like, if you tell him, he's going to say no. Just do it. He's not going to notice.
Exactly.
Well, I was thinking I could be insufferable.
Can I have a ponytail? How about when I come back as being a Jedi, I have a ponytail?
Oh, pretty.
There's
many
some
ponytails.
what movie is it Living in Oblivion, I think it is, where like it's like like satire about James LeGros basically plays like supposed to be Brad Pitt, and how he would go. He has a thing of going when he would go up to his director and be like, "What's like my motivation? Like, what can you like make that clearer?" It's like, yeah, I can't see that being fun on a set for someone.
What's my motivation? You asked George Lucas that. He's like, I don't, there's robots and stuff. Isn't that cool?
We're in space.
We're in
Did you
space.
know you were in space?
Do you know you're
That's
in
your
space?
motivation.
That's your motivation. Is you're in space. You stupid
There's
idiot.
people with lasers. They're shooting at
There's
you.
people with
just
lasers
run.
shooting at you, and you want to not get shot. Motivated. So motivated yet? And then it'll go.
It's gonna be great.
And then he comes in and he's like, and another guy comes in and he's just like,
It's like C-3PO.
I feel like
Exactly.
most of his ideas were just noises.
Right.
He's got
Probably.
he's got things storyboarded in his head with sound effects, and then he just has to put some
And
actors
then he
in there.
remembers that real people are in it as well. And then he has
And that's
to
why he made the
figure out how
prequels
to-
the way he did, because he didn't need real people
Because he
anymore.
didn't want real people, he wanted little CGI people instead of real people.
It's just this tragedy. What happened to George? Like, I don't understand. Like, this was. It's both his most successful thing and the thing that just doomed him because,
Yeah.
Because what else are you gonna do?
I mean,
Right.
What
yeah.
else are you gonna do? He did. There's
And
a reason
thankfully-
why he doesn't do anything anymore. It's one, he doesn't have to, and two, it's consuming.
Yeah.
It's when you create the biggest thing ever.
Yep.
You
like,
literally
you can't
create a
do
universe.
anything else. What are you gonna do? Make
Owls of Ga'Hoole? Because he did.
no?
Didn't he?
No.
No, which one did he
he
make?
produced it.
That's
didn't
a Zack Snyder movie.
Oh, that's not.
Legends
worth
of the
talking about.
Guardians, the Owls of Ga'Hoole. It's one of Zack Snyder's
Or
best
no,
movies.
the one with it was also CGI and it
saying
was like
something.
fairies or something.
Yeah, it was some like fairy in the woods movie
I don't
that he
know.
made, and it was just like from George Lucas, and you're like,
Why?
what?
Why?
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
Did he need to buy a boat? He just wanted to put
Well,
some
he had
money?
$4 million, but he probably needed another $150,000 to buy that boat.
Billion.
Oh, did I say million?
You said million.
I meant billion.
How
What
dare
is-
you? How dare you?
Yeah, I was like, that's all, really?
We haven't talked much about Carrie Fisher yet, and I definitely want to get Rachel's perspective on that, being
Oh,
the
I
lady
love
in the
her
room.
so much.
But also because you just have a real affinity for her as a person and as an actress.
I do. I grew up with Disney princesses, and most of the movies I watched were like, yeah, kind of, they're a little wimpy. Disney princesses are kind of wimpy, some of them, like the early on ones. They get a little tougher, like Jasmine's a little tough, Belle's tough. But, and then I watched like Jim Henson movies that like Labyrinth. Sarah's an okay character, she's a little whiny. But Carrie Fisher, Princess Leia was kind of the first like, yeah, kind of badass female character that I watched in, you know, one of these like fantasy sci-fi movies that I loved, that like didn't need rescuing, grabbed a gun, was like in the fight, and it was really impactful on me just to like see that. It was kind of really fun to see that, having not seen it before. And Carrie Fisher actually became a very constant in my life because all these movies that I love that I grew up with, she's in. And it's not just Star Wars. I also love her in Drop Dead Fred, and I love her in When Harry Met Sally.
The Burbs.
And The Burbs is one of my favorite movies of all time. I
Great
love
piece of
her.
casting.
I love her in The Burbs.
Blues
She's
Brothers.
so
Yep.
good.
Austin Powers.
Austin. But like
30
she
Rock.
Very
just
small role in Austin Powers.
very small role. But she just became this actress that always showed up, and I just kind of fell in love with her and like always wanted. I'm like, that's like the career I want to play. She played like her characters. I loved all of them. I loved the sidekick best friend role, but then she also, I loved Postcards from the Edge. I loved, you know, I got into her writing only like a few years ago. We went and saw Wishful Drinking on Broadway. And then I kind of got into like her writing and things like that, and like her mental health, and like how she was so open and honest, and I fell in love with her on a whole other level in that way, that she was very wide open, talking about like what her life has been like. And I also love Debbie Reynolds, and so yeah, Carrie Fisher's just been sort of like, yeah, this little North Star in my life, and I love Princess Leia very much. It was fun to have her as a little girl. It was nice to have.
We lost her a few years ago. She was the first to point out inconsistencies with Leia in A New Hope, in that she has this kind of affected accent, because they shot it in London. She was studying in London at the time. She's like, well, I should speak like I'm on the stage in London. She's like, I just sound stupid.
It is. That's one of the things on the rewatch. You're like, why? Oh yeah, why are you talking like that?
I feel like her portrayal in Star Wars kind of paved the way for characters like Ripley and Sarah Connor.
Totally,
definitely,
100%.
You know, it was just so cool that kind of opened the door for like, yes, this can be a thing.
It was
Right.
just
It is a thing.
it was just so unquestionably strong of a character, like right from the get-go.
Yeah.
You have this big intro scene where Darth Vader's walking over the corpses of a bunch of people that he just killed, and she marches in, and she's just like, never in the whole galaxy has there been a piece of garbage like you. And it's just like, yes!
so
you're like, I'm on her side. Hell yeah.
And then she watches her planet explode, and then she's
And then
still
Luke,
just like,
and then
all right,
Luke walks
well,
in and
what's
says,
next?
it's just like, you're a short piece of she's always barbed, just like, I'm not taking none of this. And it's amazing, and it's right off the bat, and it stays throughout all these movies.
Yeah, and
I mean,
love her.
Luke's not winning a fight with her.
No.
Like,
Harrison Ford
in
doesn't win a fight.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's often like, hey, you're a prince, and she's just like, shut up,
like,
you
I
idiot.
hate you.
And they're supposed to be like leading this rescue mission, and they're too bumbling, and like she, like right from as soon as she gets out of the jail cell, she's just like, no, this is what we got to do. I'm going to shoot the thing. We're going to jump into
and
it.
that's my favorite part, that she's just like, all right, stop talking, like you guys clearly don't have this together. I'll handle it. And it's like, but I'm rescuing you. And it's like, no, I'm good. Like, please.
Can any of you think of another poster pre-77 that had the female lead shooting a gun with her male counterpart?
And not like
She's
scantily clad.
She's ahead of Harrison Ford, dimension-wise.
Yeah.
Not off the top of my head. I mean, this
I
was
can't
one of the
either.
bigger action movies of that
Not a
decade.
poster guy.
Fine. Tim's not a poster guy.
mean,
And I
I
think
have
Poster aficionado,
memorized.
but
that's part of like what makes this film such a product of the 70s, because of the women's movement that was happening then.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know if this was the case, but I have a feeling like the way it was written in his script didn't do her any favors in showing her that way. But I think it's just her being in there and being like, hey, I think I should be a little bit more, I should thrust and have some more power.
Yeah.
To this.
I think you'd almost have to go back to like the 40s when there was like Barbara Stanwyck and Betty Davis. And actresses like that were empowered. And were
Right.
Where, like, I think Rita Hayworth, is it Gilda? There's definitely like movies where it's just the woman on the front. And
Early Hollywood was shockingly, gender neutral.
Yeah.
And like and very,
really was.
female stories being pushed forward.
Right.
Behind the scenes.
yeah, not so much. But these strong women that like ran their stories.
More
They
so
led
than
their
even
stories.
today, I would say. Or even
true, actually
it's
true.
insane. But you get a character like this, and it should be noted, she's like the only woman in these first three movies.
Right.
Her character is great, but it is
She's
limited.
the only one.
The only other woman that I
anything,
can
it
even
stands
think
out.
of is Mon Martha, and she is a leader of the resistance, of the rebellion, but she's,
She gets that
one
scene where
scene.
she stands there and says
Many
things.
bosses died to bring
Yeah.
us this information. And that's it.
That's a good point. I always forget that until because the newer ones, more recently, obviously with Ray and Ready Player One, Rogue
Ray
One,
Player One.
Ray Player One.
That great Star Wars film that just came out.
That there's so many, female pilots and female characters and female
Right.
Jedi and all that, but going back, it's really just kind of Leia. Like that's
And
it.
that's something else that the animated series have done very well, is they have really strong female characters.
When you flesh out the universe, yeah, of course, but in the original
Oh, yeah.
iteration of it, it was, sure, it's the 5 best guys who's ever made movies,
Yeah.
you know, at that time, you know,
Right.
making it, but it's still 5 guys making this movie, and and a lot of Carrie Fisher had to rewrite a lot of her roles. You know,
She did, yeah.
she was constantly punching up the script
Yep.
in ways. So that's even more credit to her
Exactly.
as like an individual force in
Right.
this.
Coming on board this huge project and being like, I'm not gonna do it like
No,
that.
I'm not
And that's
gonna
why I
say
also
that.
love her.
This is better dialogue.
Yeah.
And he's just like, you would know.
But that's why so much of Leia is Carrie Fisher. It's such a like good blend. I
Yeah.
feel like it's the character and then her
How old was
personality.
she in
19.
19, right?
19.
Carrie
And there's-
Fisher was 19 in Star Wars.
And there's the
19,
famous
the first
story
Wow.
19.
that she's
That's
told
impressive.
of. She shows up in costume, and George tells her, "Oh no, you can't wear a bra with that." And she's like, "Excuse me, why not?" And he says, "Well, there's no underwear in space." What?
Is there a scientific explanation to back that up? I don't know.
No, that's just I think a
literally
pervy guy in the
thing.
'70s who
Yeah.
wanted to look at a
A
19-year-old.
long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, you just no one paid. No one paid.
No pee.
So that's why you don't need underwear. What?
What are you
Are they
protecting your
diapers?
pants
Who
from?
directed the? So the second one was Empire was directed by
Erwin Flesher?
and who did the first one? Was it?
It's
Lucas.
Lucas.
It's Lucas.
right? 'Cause
Written
I
and
just
directed
remember
by, yeah.
it being confusing because then it's like okay, Empire's clearly the better film.
Erwin Kershner.
I don't know.
I
Return
think.
of the Jedi is my favorite.
Really? Well, because she loves the
I
Ewoks.
love
I
the
need-
Ewoks.
I
I
need
have
to
an Ewok
revisit
house. I
that.
love
I
the
do.
Ewoks. It's not good. I mean, it's good. It's definitely not the best of them, but it's also the conclusion.
Well, it's
and
hard with
all-
the third film, Godfather
Yes.
3, Matrix, Revolution.
Yeah,
what was the,
absolutely.
That was the third one. Yeah, it's yeah.
The Dark
Jurassic
Knight
Park 3.
Rises.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although Last Crusade was a great third film.
Oh
Yep.
yeah. Last
Oh,
Crusade
they really
is like
stepped up.
And need I say one
the
more
Future
time,
2.
Back to the Future 3.
no.
I'd say Back to the Future 3 is more in Return of the Jedi. Kind of like,
As long as we
that's
can all
still
agree
fun.
that the
It's
best
fun,
trilogy ever is Toy Story.
Yes.
One after the other.
They're
best.
all consistently great.
Great.
We just threw on Toy Story 2 the other night, and I was like,
they just
A,
have
I
good
forgot the
screenplays.
story. B,
Alvin
this
and
is
the
amazing.
Chipmunks, the road chip.
yes,
Not
I mean,
again.
Come on.
Speaking of screenplays, so
Jeepers Creepers
with,
3.
Look, I feel like George Lucas, he did a smart thing, and with the next two, he said, I'm stepping back, I'm going to be in the producer's role, I'm going to hire someone to write the scripts,
Because
and I'm
all
going
he
to hire...
really cared about was the special effects.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
truly.
He wanted to create a
He
special
was trying to create
effects
this
film.
this incredible, this
Spectacle.
spectacle.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
And he did. He succeeded.
But
Yeah.
he hires Lawrence Kasdan because they poached him to do Raiders of the Lost Ark. But I think one of the unsung heroes, speaking of women behind this trilogy, is so Lee Brackett was an old Hollywood screenwriter who wrote a lot of things with Hitchcock, with Howard Hawks. So George Lucas had the inklings of a screenplay for Empire Strikes Back goes to her, and she writes this whole thing. And then Lawrence Kasdan comes in and rewrites her, or just changes a few things. But I think a lot of what makes Empire so strong and so epic and almost biblical is her. And if you look at the original screenplay treatments that she worked on before it went to Kasdan, it's all there. And I think she's the one that even suggested that the final fight between Luke and Vader, he had it that I think maybe Vader is the father, his father. But she kind of punched it up and said, well, the way we reveal that should be like this.
Yeah.
And then we get that, the great scene at the end of that. Whenever I want to watch them, I do tend to, my hand goes to Empire more than any of them. But with New Hope, it's just, I just hate that I can't see the original
Yeah.
the way I would want to see it.
Right. Right.
You'll get it.
Someday.
One day.
Disney's got it. Disney's got it now. And
They know they're
Yeah,
they're
keep
for the
churning it
fighting.
I
out.
know they're waiting. It's in
And
the vault.
I hate that I'm like that. It makes me feel that way. Like I'm very geeky about it in that way.
Well, you'll get it. They're definitely gonna. They're absolutely gonna. They'd be stupid not to.
They'll do a 75th
They'll do it
or
in,
something.
on the. They're waiting for like a big
Absolutely.
anniversary.
We just
for
finished
the
50th.
nine to come
9 years
out.
would be the 50th.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that.
So they'll do
yeah,
50th
that'll-
anniversary. The original Prince now in 4K. You know,
Yeah.
just like.
Numbered. There's only this amount. You must kill each other.
And that's its own movie.
They're going to
And
start their
people
own
will
Hunger
kill
Games.
each other.
Yeah.
They will, because people
they
are
will.
stupid about this series.
Be like Black Friday in Macy's.
Oh yeah.
Ugh.
Well, that was like that show we watched, the Toys That Made Us, the documentary on Netflix. We watched it
Great
about
series.
the Star Wars toys, and I highly recommend watching. Well,
Oh, there's that whole
the
side
series
too,
is
yeah.
great, but also the Star Wars one is, oh man,
Who
it
made
has
those? Mattel?
Kenner,
Kenner.
a
They
very
made a fortune
unknown
off those.
toy company in Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah, and then they sold it to Hasbro. Then
Yeah.
Hasbro took over. There was
Yeah.
it was a huge thing that happened, and it was so much money. I think it still is some
Well,
of the
it's
most
insane.
money
It's
besides
such-
Barbie.
Yeah.
It's
My
such
brother-
a commodifiable a series. It's just
Yeah.
when you
Yep.
go to all these different planets, and
Merchandising.
it's like, oh well, I got this figure of the guy in the background. It's scene
Yeah,
2.
they released characters that don't even have names.
Yeah.
They're just like pilot.
Well, that's
and it's
what
a
it is now.
repurposing of another toy
Yep.
that they just like painted black and put a different
But that-
helmet on.
My brother's still got the Millennium Falcon and like all the main characters in mint condition, and
Yeah.
I just
I have my
it's like,
Ewok
gonna be
house.
worth-
But
It
there's
is
a
not in
cre-
good
there's a
condition.
huge credit to like the universe that he created and
Yeah.
and how vast and how expansive it's become. Like I grew up on video games of this stuff. Some
Oh
of
yeah,
it-
because
some-
the
some-
whole thing basically happened again.
Yeah,
With the
with the prequels and
Yeah.
stuff. There was a pod racing video game which was
I remember that.
awesome.
Oh yeah, that was
which was
really fun.
awesome.
a lot of
Star
fun.
Wars
It was like
pod
Mario
racing.
Kart,
Yeah,
but in-
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
really fun.
They have games of all the original ones. They have Star Wars Battlefront.
Yep, that's a
Is
great
that
game.
like that got me through college?
The graphics in
and,
those games are always amazing.
and
Yeah.
they're amazing, and it's just such a because there's so much fodder for it because it was built off of like the old greats of the
Yeah.
You just
of
made me think
westerns.
of, you just made me
of-
think of the power of world building in these
Yeah.
in these films.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's incredible the amount of meticulous detail in these environments.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing.
And then you can make 8, TV shows off of it, and
Yep.
and prequels and movies and a whole
Toys and
book
books and-
series.
yeah.
and,
Yeah,
You can do-
and
countless
video
book
games
series. I mean,
and-
there have been novelizations of Star Wars since the films came out.
Yeah.
I own 3, but there are hundreds, if not thousands,
There's
of
I mean,
different
so many.
Mel
novelizations
Brooks
out there.
does usually send-ups of genres. This was a send-up of an entire film.
Yeah.
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 Like how that just shows how
Well, because it
massive
was so smart to be built on because it's a western, but it's got a sci-fi coating. On
Yeah.
it. It's
Right.
a traditional
Western
story
space
that
opera.
you've always seen.
Yeah.
But it's got that. There's a sand planet. And one of the most epic movies of all time is Lawrence of Arabia.
Right.
There are.
You can't tell
it's
me
very
Lean-
clearly like
visually,
one to
David
one
Lean wasn't
visually
on
on
it.
a lot of that
Right.
stuff.
And
Yeah,
he had to,
exactly.
and that was like the, whether he knew what he was doing or not, like he stole from the right things and
Yeah.
pieced
Sure.
together all the right elements to work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy that, I mean, it had to be overnight that it was like this movie opened in 1977, and then it was like, there was yesterday, and then the day after Star Wars opened, and everyone's like going crazy, like knowing who Lucas
Yeah.
is, knowing who the characters is.
because it
And-
was
It's-
anticipated
yeah.
to be a failure.
Oh yeah,
Right, and that's
really
why
everyone in
a
production,
small toy
yeah.
company made the toys, and then how many? It was in the theater longer than that's. I'm thinking of the right thing, right? This was in the theater longer than like any movie ever. Wasn't
I think
it in the
so.
theater for like over a year or something like
I
that?
want to say
They
like
just-
40 weeks or something.
It was like
For the time,
almost a year for the
obviously.
time,
Yeah.
the time. But it was in the theater, like they just kept extending it.
Yeah.
And it was, I think it was 40 weeks. Yeah, so almost a year.
Wow.
And now you don't see that. It's just
No,
like
it's on HBO.
Well, because they
Pop
want
it
to
in.
direct the video, so
You
you
know
know.
a little bit. As far as like extending a film in the theaters.
yeah, if
Yeah.
it's popular enough.
Right.
Like I went to see Infinity War and Black Panther is showing like right next to it. And
Yeah.
I'm just like those are that just happened. you
Yeah.
know?
Yep.
So it's all but with these, it wasn't like it was a year apart or anything.
No,
Right,
no,
right,
not at all. Yeah. everything gets churned out much faster now. But yeah, it was one of the, and then it just like, blew up because it wasn't expected to. And I think that's why the documentary is like, the smaller toy company took it because they were like, who's gonna buy these toys? And then they talked to all these like Star Wars toys collectors too that are like, there were so many toys that they had this like, they were
honestly terrifying.
They knew so much information, but like, yeah, these toys that like these random pilots and stuff that they had made, not really knowing because the script kept changing and like they were like,
they were making toys before the movie
They were
was
making
done.
more toys before the movie came out, so then they had to make more toys when the movie came out and it was popular, and it just was this whole like.
Was there
it was
anything
a
like
mess.
this before this, as far as merchandising?
I
on a
don't
film?
think so. I think that's
really?
what
Not to
this
this
kind
scale
of
either.
was besides Disney. They
Right.
it mentions Disney.
Doing
That was
now.
it.
They're still doing it.
They're still
Yeah.
doing it.
They're still doing it. They're still
Yeah.
churning out There's going to be a Star Wars movie a year until we
There's
die.
one coming out in a
Like,
couple
that's-
weeks.
There's one in a couple weeks. We got
Star
Han Solo
Wars
movie.
saved Lego too.
Yeah.
Lego
It did,
was
it
about
did.
to go under, and then they partnered
Wow.
together and released the
Yeah, isn't that
Star
crazy?
Wars or the Lego Star Wars
Really
game,
surprises me.
which
Yep.
the Lego Star Wars game of the prequels is better than the films because there's no dialogue in it. So it's just the story, and if you parse it down to that, you're like, I can get behind this.
Well, that's why they're not good. Like what Tim was saying before,
Yeah.
like the story of like A New Hope is so good and so simple, and those are the stories that stay with us,
Yeah.
and they're
It's simple.
perfect and wonderful. And you have the scroll, and it kind of explains it, and then you're like, all right, I'm in it. Let's go. And it's just like Wizard of Oz, where like Luke gets to space with everybody, and it's like, okay, now the story is going and it's happening,
Yeah.
and we're all in it. Here we go. And the prequels, it's so bogged down with so much stuff. I'm like, I couldn't describe any of those movies. Number one, because I've only seen them once and I pretend they don't exist. Number two, because there's so much that happens. I feel like I have to, I'm like, oh, and then also this thing happened, and then this and this. Like it takes a long time to boil it down.
It became like the tone was like so silly. It like just was like there was like wait a
Yeah.
minute, like everything that was like cool about these movies
Well,
is gone, and
yes.
it's this cheap humor and light like
Yep.
it was, yeah. They
They
traded
don't
in
have
everything.
clearly defined archetypes that they're working with in the prequels. You know, like they,
Yeah.
The characters
don't
aren't,
have
the
a Han
characters
Solo.
aren't as
They
strong.
don't have-
and they
Right,
tried
right.
to. They tried desperately to, but it just doesn't.
One of my favorite response videos about the prequels is from the guys at Red Letter Media, and it's
my
like
God.
20 minutes long, so it's
I
a
can't
slog.
listen
No,
to
they're
it.
like an hour long. They're
No,
like
they're
Oh
so
yeah, they're
long.
they're
So
very
long.
long, and he
I don't
does
like
one
that
for
guy's
each
voice.
film.
And there's a character, and it's disgusting, and like the skit humor that they sparse it with is like that he like kidnaps women and like
It's super weird,
it's,
but
and like
my
he's always
favorite part of
vomiting.
it,
Like
my favorite part of it is he asks people to describe the characters in A New Hope without saying what they look like or what they do. And they're like, oh, Han Solo is very roguish and he's kind of a scoundrel and all this stuff. And they're like, Qui-Gon Jinn. And they go, well, no, that's what he looks like.
Well, what happened was the originals were built off of something that they made it something new. They took something different, made it new, and then
Yeah.
it became this giant thing and this huge commodified thing.
Yeah.
And then he made it based on the commodification rather than
Yep.
basing it on like the things that he loved.
It's
He made it
becoming
because he was like,
oversaturated.
shit.
Right, right.
I should have made this in 1987. You know, I should have made episode 1 in 1987, and then
Well, it's like-
you know,
it's like-
1992 episode.
It's
you know,
like
just
Coppola
like
making
parse it out.
Godfather Part
Yeah.
3 in 1990.
Yeah.
It's like, were you really going to make
It's-
that?
it's
a
Like,
little
is that
like-
really
like,
the?
did you
It
have-
seems
Did
like a
we need
vanity
it?
kind of
Totally,
trope, you know?
absolutely, absolutely. That's how these felt to me too. Like I worked at the movie theater in Essex at the time. I was in high school when they came out, and I was so excited for more Star Wars movies
Yep.
because at the time I didn't think we were ever going to get more Star Wars movies. So I
Yeah.
was just watching the Star Wars that we had, and it was great. And I was so excited. And I remember we got to see it. They would have like Thursday night movies just to test like the reel and stuff, so we would get to go and watch it, be working there. And I remember all of us walked out and we're like, what just happened? Like,
Yeah.
it was terrible, and I really wanted to like it, but I
I
hated it
wanted
so
that
much.
moment. I don't have that. You don't have that moment anymore with movies, really, because of like. You get early reviews, so you
Yeah.
have an idea
Yes,
of if
you
a movie's going to be
know,
like great or not.
And, like, 10
And
so like
internet.
so like I go into Batman versus Superman, and I'm like, this is probably going to be shit. And then
Right.
it turns out to
Stop swearing.
this is probably not going to be very good. Goodness gracious. And so I have that expectation. But with this, people were like, oh my God, it's gonna be amazing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then it was just,
And it was garbage.
And then it wasn't.
Because how could it not be? It's like
Yeah, exactly.
You'd think like Lucas made these films, the initial films,
Right.
knowing that there would be technology someday to properly support his vision. And it's
Totally.
going to be this big thing, and then it's like, wait, you just didn't care about the writing at all.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so, oh my goodness. We just used to quote it so hard, all of them, like just the silly things, like the hold me like you did on Naboo. Like all these like terrible lines that you're like, this is gross.
Well,
it just
Your
makes
skin
you
is
feel
soft,
gross.
not like sand.
He had like emotionless delivery
Yeah.
from
Oh my God.
Natalie Portman and Hayden Christensen in the first two films.
They're
It's just
wooden creatures.
it's
They're made of wood.
and they're good actors.
But
and
that's
that's why I put it on the
that's
director.
what you see.
Yeah.
That's what you see with the prequels. Is you're just like, oh, I love Ewan McGregor. What are you doing, Ewan McGregor?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
where it becomes that Samuel L. Jackson is terrible in
Liam
movies.
Neeson.
Liam
I mean,
Neeson
there's not
is
a good
terrible.
They're all
performance in any of
bad
them.
in it, which I don't blame. Yeah, I don't blame them
But
at
like
all. I definitely blame the
he
director.
went into it
What
with a
did you wanna
similar
do?
mindset to the first
You
one.
get on board, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Well, to the first one, he went in with a mindset where he wanted to create a spectacle, but when he did it the second time, and credit to him, like Jar Jar Binks, as awful of a character as he is
a technological
it's a
advancement.
technological
Oh,
marvel. The
yes.
first like fully CGI character, and if you watch that movie, he doesn't really seem out of place, like in terms of how he's acting and
Right.
how he's going.
The eye lines are all pretty
It's sort of like
good. Like,
Tarantino's
it's good,
obligatory use of the N-word in his movies is like it's a sort of it's like, do you really need that? It's the same thing with Lucas in this. It's like, did Jar Jar Binks need to talk like that? Is that just at the expense of like you're going to try to get laughs? It really seems like such an unnecessary
He
thing.
wrote it for
There's
kids.
literally
it
no
was
reason
for children.
it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I loved Jar Jar Binks when I
you
was
did.
a 9-year-old, and when I was just like, ha ha ha, his tongue goes numb, and that's so silly. What's he doing? What's he gonna do next? He stepped in
Yeah.
poop. I love it. I'm 9.
He put
Yeah, of
he put
course,
Scooby Doo
yeah.
in Star Wars.
Pretty
And when
much.
you're a kid,
And-
that's great. But as an adult, you're like, why are you besmirching this world that I love so much by making
people
it
just like the
comedic?
Ewoks, and
I know.
they're just
I
like
love the
kind of
Ewoks
don't
so much,
understand.
But they're
guys.
just like kind of small and cute and like goofy. But Jar Jar
harmless.
Binks is like aggressively
Right.
sad.
And
I'm
he's
sad.
in so
Yeah.
much of it. He's like a one of the main characters, and like
They follow him. He's
Yeah.
like
He's even more annoying in the video game. He
Oh,
would,
yeah.
You couldn't shake him.
Yeah.
He'd be like, I think I'm okay. And then he'd be like, and he would just like,
you're
like
not
come up to
playing
you
the
and you're
game
like,
anymore.
away from me. Yeah, the game is to lose Jar Jar Binks.
And it's like,
You
can I
probably
turn
do
on
that.
friendly fire, please? Just put it right to his face.
Oh man.
But I mean,
amazing.
the positive takeaway from the prequels was this rebirth of new Star Wars material that was coming out. There are new books, there are new series and video games, and now we potentially have a standalone Obi-Wan movie that's going to be made, and all the fans are praying that they let Ewan McGregor do it because
yeah, they're saying that he's gonna do it.
we don't have Alec
hope
Guinness
so.
anymore. So our next best Obi-Wan is Ewan McGregor.
But
So
like,
just
we
let
like,
him do it.
But like I like if I'm good. If there's a bright spot in the prequels, it is Ewan McGregor.
Absolutely.
Like, I
He's
do
great.
like his I do not hate what he's doing
He's
with
the
it.
better of all of that.
But
he,
it is
he
all
works with it.
But he seems like he's in a different movie.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
he might
He's
be.
like
I don't know.
self-aware.
It's a lot of
He's
CGI.
self-aware
He might
about
be in
it.
another like.
I'm in a
else
bad
was
film
like,
right now.
Hello there.
Hello there. And it has sparked wonderful wonderful meme and GIF culture
Oh,
on
the
Reddit.
prequel memes. Oh, amazing.
Check that out on Reddit
Amazing.
if you want a good time suck. They're just so funny.
Have you seen the re-edited like music video of Yoda doing? I'll have to send you guys the link. It's there's this whole team that like re-edits things together and does all different dialogue.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, amazing.
And it's a whole song that he does, and he like he like bops Luke on the head. A bunch of times. It's like really fun.
Oh, the lip reading.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, the
yeah.
red lip reading guys, yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a fun song.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing.
Love that.
Speaking of songs, perfect transition to talk about John Williams'
J-Dubs.
amazing
Baby
score for
J-Dubs.
this film.
It's a character in the film.
Yes.
The score.
It's like New York. It's a character in the story.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Leave it. You're gonna make too much noise. From the first thing you see,
Yeah.
just the fanfare and Star Wars, and it pushes at you, and you're like, okay, it pushes you back in your seat. And I even feel that watching it on my couch. When it starts, I even go, a little
Well,
bit.
it's such a masterful score. Everyone has themes. You don't get that nowadays with these epic movies. It's all copies of either Hans Zimmer or John Williams.
Yeah.
And with this, you get like him staring at twin suns over Tatooine, and he's just looking, and he's sucked so far, so you don't like him.
Yeah.
And then the music comes in, and you're like,
And
I
it's
feel
this
for
like
you, bro.
emotional moment. It's so beautiful.
Who did Back to the Future? Silvestri?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Alan
that's
Silvestri.
like, I feel like that's like second to this as
Agreed.
far as iconic
Oh yeah,
scores. you know?
absolutely. Back to the
Agreed.
Future. Every time I hear that score too, it's like, yeah,
Like
just
the little-
goosebumps.
He's just got some, like, it's Jaws, this, and then Superman.
And then
It's like
Indy.
right from
And
the
Indy.
jump, it's
Yeah.
iconic. Like
Yeah.
you're like,
Yeah.
oh my god, like I'm in good
And
hands.
you
Right,
can't have
right.
one without the other.
yeah.
Like, you can't have Star Wars without the Star Wars theme. So much so that on Rebels and Clone Wars, they use the original fanfare, but then they've kind of like morphed it into something slightly different, that it still feels like John Williams, but you can tell that it's someone paying wonderful tribute to him. And it's like, for the first few episodes, I was like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this. And I was like, okay, I see what you guys are doing. You're not taking away from John Williams and doing something new. You're just not doing John Williams.
Right.
And that's admirable.
He did Jurassic Park too, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Oh,
Wow. I mean, I was watching Ferris Bueller the other night, and they used the Jaws theme in a scene satirically, and I feel like it became so pop culture.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
he's so immediately good at creating like a memorable
Yep.
theme. There's so many memorable small themes, like for the Cantina music
Yes.
gets stuck in your head.
Yep.
The
Even just the opening horns of the Indiana Jones theme, you just hear that bum, 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 bum. You
you're
know,
like,
and you're
oh.
like, boom.
get on my horse.
Where's my fedora? Let's do this. And it's the same with all the Star Wars films,
Yeah.
and you know,
And you recognize it immediately if you're
Yeah.
like hearing it somewhere.
Leia's
like,
theme.
Yeah, Leia's theme.
our cocktail hour of our wedding was film scores.
It was.
And at one point, I was
And still
standing.
a lot of John Williams.
I was
now that
talking
think
to
about
somebody,
it.
and one of my friends came over and went, "Is this from Empire Strikes Back?" And I was like, "I believe it is." He's like, "This is the best wedding ever." I was like, "Yeah, I agree."
Because film scores are great.
I wasn't the DJ. I just asked for it.
There was a lot of John Williams though. But yeah, it's what you said. I completely agree with that. It really is a character in the film. Absolutely.
It's hard to imagine the movie without it.
It'd be so weird.
It'd be so weird if it was, even if it was just like a different score. I think because of like he does the intensity and it like ebbs and flows with the scene. Like you feel like you're almost listening to like how they're breathing.
Yeah.
In a way.
Their
that-
heartbeat.
What was the original title of this? Didn't he change it?
Oh, yeah,
It's something
Blue Harvest.
It's something ridiculous.
That was their
I just
code
feel
name.
like there's
was
those
Blue Harvest
decisions
was the
that aren't
code
even
name.
always made by
Yes.
the filmmaker, where it's like, thank God that happened. Like the original
Family
ending
Guy,
of
Blue
Clerks.
Harvest.
You know, where like,
Yeah.
thank God someone said the right thing. or
Right.
This happened because that would have been. It could have tanked the film. I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely.
you know.
So, can we all agree that no one gives a crap if Guido fires first?
No.
No.
Like it doesn't.
That's
It's
not
such
a
a.
thing.
The
it's such
things
a
that he changed for the
detriment-
re-release.
There's so
like,
weird things.
The
that you-
point of
Yeah.
Han Solo is that he is.
He's a pirate. He's a scoundrel.
He's
Space
kind of a
pirate.
bad guy.
Yeah.
He's the bad guy in the Western.
Right.
Kind of bad guy.
Yeah, like
yeah.
he's the man with
the
the. He's like
reluctant
Clint
hero.
Eastwood.
Anti-hero.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
I don't know about
Making
any of
him
this
heroic from the
space
jump doesn't
mumbo
change
jumbo.
That's pretty good Harrison Ford, dude.
I'm not so
I
sure.
don't think I've heard you do that yet.
He just kind of.
Yeah, why did that become a thing? Like that's what it's so
You
stupid.
believe in this religious mumbo jumbo?
I've been
crap?
around the galaxy many places, and I haven't seen anything that makes me believe there's some magical power. He's playing it.
What I
drunk.
love
It's
is
like
that
such a
Luke in
great
that scene is
choice.
like, oh, so you don't believe in the... And Luke learned about the Force
Yesterday.
like 10 minutes
Right, like
earlier.
he's an expert now all of a sudden.
Can we have a Spaceballs segment? On
Oh,
this?
sure.
Oh,
Because
please.
Thank God for these movies
Yeah.
because Spaceballs is
It
part of my
exists.
part of my whole
Yeah.
childhood.
Same.
I know every part of that movie.
There's a
And it's
comedian named Mike Lawrence, and we saw him in New York once. He opened for Chris Hardwick, and Hardwick's audience is obviously very nerdy. And Mike Lawrence comes out and he goes, "So, given the audience that we have tonight, I'm sure we got a lot of Star Wars fans." And everyone's like, "Yeah." He's like, "All right, before you get too excited, you're gonna hate me in a second. I like Spaceballs better." And everybody's like, "What?" He goes, "No, hang on. I saw it first. So I was like, this movie's awesome. It's so funny. You know, these characters are ridiculous. And then I saw Star Wars. And I was like, what is this unfunny Spaceballs? That really cracked me up because I was like, yeah, that would suck to see him in reverse. Because then you'd just be like, how come nobody's being silly?
Well, Spaceballs is great because Mel Brooks is great.
Yes.
And it was
And
just
he
him
gets
taking
it.
on a thing. You know,
He gets it so well.
He casts it so well.
You know, he clearly loves his subject matter
Oh, yeah.
so
Oh,
much.
yes.
That's
You
why
have to
he's
when
able
you
to
do
celebrate
parody.
it.
Yeah. But he also sees what it's going to be, and that's why he has the jokes about Spaceballs 2, the search for more money.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All the merchandising.
Well,
merchandising.
when did Spaceballs come out?
89. 89.
I want to say 83.
Yeah, I thought it was
No,
it was
89.
later.
It's 89. I'm
It was
a
later.
one of
year
his
ahead.
later ones. I
really
thought
am.
it was like 8. Okay.
Yeah, because it
it's
took him a
89.
second.
But
All of the
between
Star
all
Wars
of it.
had come out, I think, right?
It's either 87 or 89.
87.
Or 88.
But I loved Spaceballs. I watched that
it's
all the
87.
time.
87.
Good
Yep.
call.
Yeah, I love Spaceballs. I think it's so funny.
The best moment is
Great
like dark helmet.
performance.
So many
Yo,
great
The first
performances.
one, it's a dark
is
helmet.
almost
And he's
as
walking down
big
this
as
ominous, and then
mine.
his thing opens and it's Rick Moranis. And it's like, that's
Oh, it's
hilarious.
so good. He saw so
can't
many
breathe in this
opportunities
thing.
for that in
Oh,
that movie.
absolutely.
Lone Star, Bill Pullman is Lone Star.
Oh,
I mean,
it's so
come
good.
on.
I also think I saw it
John
when I
Candy
was
is
pretty
barf.
young,
Yes.
and it didn't take till I was older and rewatched it that I got more of the jokes. I just thought it was like funny as a kid.
Yeah.
But then I grew up and was like, oh, there's some dirty jokes in here too.
Yo,
Okay.
Schwartz is almost as big as mine.
Yeah.
Let's
I
see
thought
how
that
you
was
handle
hilarious. Not laughing at the
But then
thing
you
I'm
even
supposed to be laughing at.
You have the perfect comparisons throughout the film of like they fly in a Winnebago because
Yep.
that's in the 80s especially, that's total trash, that's total junk, and the whole time they're always talking about what a piece of junk the Millennium Falcon is.
Right.
It's a brilliant film.
Yeah, there's so many nuances in it. I love that
Oh
movie.
yeah, like to be a fly on the wall in that writer's room when they're just
Oh.
coming up with the ideas, because that's really all
To
it
just
was.
hang
It's
out
like,
with
hey,
Mel
this
Brooks
would be
for
funny
20
because of
minutes.
this. And
Yeah,
just
exactly.
started
I
going.
would lose my mind.
Him playing with the toys. I wasn't playing with my dolls again.
No one saw you playing with your dolls again.
Oh my god, I love him in that movie. Rick Moranis is so good in that.
And then you take some shots at Star Trek with the beam me up, snotty.
Yeah.
Alien.
It's yeah, exactly.
An alien.
Absolutely.
I do love the alien bit.
Are there any problems with Star Wars? Is there any criticism that we have of the originals before they were updated and he added in a bunch of nonsense that wasn't necessary? Which we can talk about that scene too, because it's pointless. But
Absolutely. Yeah. And the only thing that I notice is just that, and it's just because I'm a structure nerd, and this movie does have a very strong structure, but oddly enough, it's 40 minutes before we get to Luke and Uncle Ben and them dying, which is harsh, by the way. But him coming back and being like, I'm going with you. I want to be a Jedi. Where, like, from a technical screenwriting standpoint, like that should be like, we're going into the second act, and that should be anywhere between 30 and 32 minutes. But it was just weird. Like I never noticed how long. The
he
first
gives
act
it enough
was.
time for that to actually be a point of no return.
It's
within
hard
the
for me
story.
to notice bad things that aren't just like jokey, like things that I could joke about,
Make fun of, yeah.
make
Yeah.
fun of, or like the relative cheapness of it. There is like a very clear. Oh, we made this for a small amount of money. Which, but to that, it's a charm.
That's its inherent charm.
Yeah.
The same way you love a Ed Wood movie or
Yeah.
any of those movies with the ingenuity that it took to pull off something like
Sure.
that.
And you see it in like the making of documentaries and stuff like that, when like, particularly in Empire, in order to make the speeders work over the snow, they had to lower the transparency so sometimes you can see through like the speeder as he's going in on his approach to go around the AT-AT. You can see through the like cockpit, and when you see the TIE fighters flying in space, you can see that they're in a definitive square as they're moving around, and then there's just black with stars behind it. But again, no one had ever done anything like this to this scale with this kind of scope. So looking at it now, yeah, you could pick it apart, but
It was an engineering achievement.
absolutely.
Yeah. No, I can't, honestly, like, not really.
Yeah.
I don't really, aside from like silly things, no, they're really great movies.
It really does suck you up, and it doesn't, like we were talking about with Close Encounters, like it doesn't get bogged down with too much exposition. It's just like,
It just
thanks
tells
to
the
the
story.
dropped in, like
It literally takes you to space. I mean,
Yeah.
that's I think so powerful when I was a kid because I felt like I was.
It's
in another
escapist
world.
cinema,
Yeah.
100%.
Yes.
Especially growing up in rural Colorado in the middle of nowhere, I would pop this in my basement, and I would be there, and it was so much fun.
And I think if you compare this to like what we're seeing now from Star Wars, which is like The Last Jedi and like Rogue One, and there's so much more happening in those films. However you feel about them, positive or negative, it's just so like going back and watching this, it was just like wow. It's just simple, and it just tells its story,
Yep.
and it doesn't have this need for all the excess in in the other areas
what's
where
cool is-
where you see that now in like a Rogue. Well, a Rogue One is just like
That's such a
remember
throwaway
that's
film.
not that wasn't a movie. It
Yeah.
was like a remember the cool things you love, and it's like yeah, I saw it last year, man.
In
I
Force
just think
Awakens,
it's
remember?
cool that the kind of the code or the blueprint of the movie is so immediately culturally recognizable that like you can stylize it in so many different ways. The way J.J. Abrams just wanted you to feel nostalgic again. It was like the perfect kind of push into that
Yeah.
universe. Whereas you put someone like Rian Johnson in there, and you really can make like a heady, cool, visually amazing
Yeah.
Star Wars movie. And I'm excited to see more auteurs get brought in.
Yeah.
Or if
Yeah.
it's still going to be Rian Johnson.
And
or
that's
however-
why I
Ryan
love
Johnson's
the,
getting his own trilogy.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
why I
See,
love
that's
the
amazing.
animated series so much, because it's exactly that. It's fans of Star Wars being able to make Star Wars, and they're killing it. Rebels was incredible. That was such a good show, and I encourage anybody who likes Star Wars. You don't even have to have watched Clone Wars, but it kind of follows after the Clone Wars series. But it's just so good. Like they handle some heavy stuff in that show, and it's on the Disney Channel. It's like Disney XD, so it's like Saturday night on the Disney Channel. But you watch it, and you're like, it was a 2-part finale for the series. I got choked up at one point because like you really get invested with these characters because the people making it care enough about what they're doing that it's like anything else that you just get sucked into, but it also happens to be in this vast universe that you've come to love over the last 40 years.
And they've taken care of a lot of the political question mark elements of the original trilogy, how there's only one woman and one black person in the whole galaxy in these movies. So it makes it I don't know. I don't see that as a problem as much when going back and
It's
watching
progress.
these
That's
movies
what it is.
because we've gotten to where we've gotten, and the two non-white man characters that they do have in the films are some of the most memorable characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lando Calrissian and Princess Leia.
Yeah.
You love these characters because
Oh,
they feel created. They feel fully
Real and lived in.
lived in.
Yeah.
I mean, Lando's character with you're not really sure if he is making, if you can trust
Yeah.
him. Like his is the most like Shakespearean
Yeah.
of any of the characters.
Yeah.
That's what
He's
makes
so
Empire
human.
so
Yeah.
great.
Right.
That's
He's
what
Yeah.
so human in Empire because it's like, well, I'm in charge of this whole city, and I can protect them, or I can protect my one friend. It's kind
From
of
a
like
while ago, who stole my ship.
Right. Who like I kind of don't like.
yeah,
Like,
exactly. They have some animosity between them, but yeah,
Which will all be ruined in 2
Solo.
weeks with Solo, a Star Wars story.
Ron Howard's directing it?
My favorite.
Yeah, because
Because Phil Lord and
Yes.
Chris Miller were fired from
I go
making
back
it
and forth
midway
between
through.
wondering if Ron Howard still knows how to direct, to be honest.
I don't know.
I'm
'Cause,
really
like,
excited.
Rush was good, but then I'll see another In the Heart of the Sea, and it's like this is the clunkiest,
Or
most
the
unartistic
Dan Brown, Langdon.
I left
yeah.
the theater. One of the movies I left was
they're not
Inferno. I
great.
walked out of the theater. It's like this a film student would make a better film.
Well, he was hired to do it to make it competent because he's
Because it
by
was-
definition a just like you can come in and do a competent
fix
job
me.
at
Yeah.
fixing this movie. But I love in the
Competency
Solo.
should never be a goal.
No, it shouldn't.
Settling.
Well, I'm excited because in the trailer for Solo: A Star Wars Story, Han is holding on to Chewie, who's hanging out of a window, and he's gonna like hit into this rock, and then it cuts. and I wonder if Chewbacca is gonna
make it.
I thought you were gonna say something serious.
Is he gonna make it?
I'm
But
really
that's
looking forward
That's
to
kind
it.
of the bummer with
What
like
if they
more
kill Chewie?
movies.
That's just crazy.
Oh no!
But like that's the bummer with the like doing all the prequels. It's great, and
You
if you
know
have
the
different
history.
characters and stuff, then that's awesome. And to like learn about their past, great. Like, but there's no tense. Like, how to be tense.
I never wanted to know more about Harrison and Han Solo.
Han Solo's pretty
I never was
straightforward,
like,
pretty
I need a
straightforward.
whole story and a whole movie.
I only did because I
mystique
knew that there were
his-
novels. And I was
Yeah.
like, I'd read a young Han Solo story. That
Yeah,
sounds
like a
fun.
book.
Or like
But
a
I'm
young
not gonna
Indiana
watch
Jones.
Stormtrooper number 67, you
Yeah.
know? You're like, I want to know.
No, it's going to be
backstory.
Boba
Like, what
Fett. We're going to get a Boba Fett movie. We're
Which
going to get
I'm
an
fine with.
Obi-Wan movie. We're going to
fine with
get
both of those.
We're going to
Obi-Wan
get
would be
crazy
cool.
nonsense.
Well, because the only reason I'm okay with the Boba Fett movie is because they made a bounty hunter video game about Jango Fett that was really fun and it had a great story. It's true.
I
I'm
feel like
just-
I'm
you're
just.
nerdish
I feel like
showing,
they're
I'm
just
just
milking the
The
series, and I'm just getting it all over my face, and I'm just like, stop it, stop
I don't want
pouring
any
this
more.
milk on my face.
Let me
it's
digest
blue.
what I have.
I was just gonna
I
say,
don't
is it blue
understand.
milk? Or is it from one of those sea cow things that they decided to make?
Ah, stop it! There's so many.
We could talk about Star Wars for hours and hours, but we are out of time, unfortunately.
Ha.
Final thoughts on Star Wars: A New Hope, and then the Star Wars universe.
On New Hope specifically?
Yeah.
I mean, just one of the most entertaining movies ever made. I'll keep watching it from the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Agreed. It's a great film. It still holds up. It's still fun. It still gets me excited. It makes me want to watch all of them right afterwards.
Yeah.
Like the original trilogy all together. And I love the characters, and I mean, now I can say that, Leia is my favorite Disney princess, which gives me joy. But yeah, I love it, and I love all of them. Star Wars universe, I've always really liked it, and I'm kind of glad that it's like made a resurgence and like it's cool to like Star Wars, because I was always the girl who liked Star Wars growing up, and none of my
not
other
cool.
girlfriends,
No,
none of my other girlfriends watched
yeah.
it. They were
not
like,
cool.
I would like beg my friends to watch Return of the Jedi with me, and they'd be like, why? Like, well, Ewoks? I don't know. But also, I love the movies overall, not just like the Ewoks and the droids and stuff. But yeah, so I'm glad that I'm just glad it's cool, because I started it.
I think it sucks. What a terrible movie. What a terrible,
Hot
terrible,
take, terrible.
garbage.
It'll never
The
succeed.
lightsaber, there was a reason for it.
No, but it's like that is, to your point,
Yeah.
what you're saying. It's the things that were mockable and make funnable in the past are cool now. Like the Star Wars and the Avengers are like
Right.
gangbusters at the box office,
Oh, yeah.
and if you don't know what they are, screw
You're a
you.
nerd now.
I'm
You're an anti-nerd.
I am a cynic when it comes to things like this. I think that the commodification and the commercialization of it is in large part a bad thing.
As he
But if
gestures
we're
to all my
occasionally
stuff.
gonna get tossed like a good piece of work, then that's great and that's cool. Whatever. As for the original, it's great. It's a fantastic work. It reminds you of your favorite movies that came out before it, and it reminds you of all the movies that it inspired and came out after it. It really is a seminal piece of film history. And
Well,
it sucks.
It's my favorite.
It sucks.
It's my favorite film, hands down.
In terms of the original, like, it is just unapologetically a audience film that is supposed to be fun, and I don't think there's anything to apologize for that. Like, unlike many cynical film nerd, I don't think Lucas and Spielberg ruined 70s auteur cinema. I don't think any of them knew what was coming down the line, like what they were going to create. But I'm mixed on some of the results that have come after and all of this stuff. But as far as the original, it's just it's great genre filmmaking at its best.
Absolutely.
Now let's all go watch the Star Wars Christmas special.
We didn't even talk about
That
that.
may just be some garbage to
How awkward is that?
Ugh.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, we still believe in Jesus.
Christmas.
Thank you guys for coming on. This was a wonderful season finale.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And thank you, David, for letting us do this one.
Thank you for having us on.
Thank you
That's
for
what we were
having
supposed to
us.
say, right?
Yes.
This is also my final episode. Devin's going to be resuming my role when the show comes back, whenever that may be. And I look forward to whatever you guys have planned for the future of the show. And thank you three for being on so much. It was
Yeah.
great to
Thanks
have.
for having us.
I'm married to you.
Once
so.
we once we were like, let's have guests, I was like, well, I know 3 right off the bat. And you've been on here.
We got nothing
lot of
going
times.
on.
Nope.
Hey, you know,
It's a
sometimes
Tuesday.
you just take a Tuesday off.
Lincoln, thank you very much for forcing me to be in this chair, to be
Absolutely.
in the show, to create this show, and you know, we're going to carry the torch for you.
Awesome.
Do I have to be here for this part?
This
It's
is
going to
when-
get even sappier.
Is it
Your-
gonna
your
get
love
sap-
of film is inspiring.
Is this gonna get episode 2 love story sappy?
I don't like this conversation. It's like sand. Of course, it gets everywhere. All right.
Send me a pear across the table, David.
I'm literally crying.
On that note, thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.